Hello, I am Tarık Toros. Welcome to what's happening in Turkey. The grand chessboard. What is left for the Kurds? Tensions between Syria's central government and the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, which controls much of northeastern Syria, escalated at the start of January after clashes around Aleppo. The situation has still not fully stabilized. Several agreements were announced, yet fighting on the ground continued for weeks. Only on 20th of January did both sides agree to a limited 4-day ceasefire. Before that ceasefire took effect, the SDF withdrew from many areas it had long controlled. Even after the agreement, violations continued. The truce was later extended by 15 days to support the US transfer of ISIS detainees to Iraq, according to the Syrian Ministry of Defense, and the new ceasefire took effect on 24th of January at 11 p.m. local time, underscoring Washington's continuing mistrust of Damascus on the issue of ISIS prisoners. Washington has begun transferring ISIS prisoners and suspects from camps and prisons in Syria to Iraq, and all parties are now waiting for this process to be completed. Deep mistrust defines every side of this conflict. In reality, there is only one decisive power on the ground, the United States, represented by President Trump's close ally, US Ambassador to Turkey and Special Envoy for Syria, Tom Barak. The fall of Rojava. On 18th of January, Syria's de facto President Ahmed al-Shara announced that a 14-point ceasefire text had been signed between Damascus and the SDF. SDF commander Mazlum Abdi confirmed it. At first, the SDF handed control of Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa to the central government. But what existed was a text, not a genuine agreement. Syrian forces soon pushed Kurdish units northward toward the Turkish border and began advancing on Hasaka. The SDF responded by calling for resistance. Mediation efforts led by US envoy Tom Barak and Kurdistan regional government leader Mesut Barzani temporarily eased tensions. Yet, within just 2 weeks, the SDF lost nearly 80% of the territory it had once governed. Damascus left Hasaka and Kamishli under Kurdish administration. But the Kurds lost not only cities, they also lost vital oil fields. Approximately 170,000 Kurds were displaced. At the same time, the Kobani region, once territorially connected to Hasaka, was cut off. A severe humanitarian crisis unfolded in Kobani, with water, bread, and electricity cut off. Families remained besieged and forced to sleep in freezing temperatures. The Kurdish Red Crescent confirmed that at least 5 children had died from hypothermia. Without international assistance, conditions were expected to deteriorate further. On 23rd of January, the SDF transferred control of the Akdam prison in Raqqa, where ISIS detainees were held, to Damascus. Immediately afterward, its forces rushed north to help defend Kobani. When they entered the city, crowds welcomed them with cheers. How the Kurdish-run Hasaka governorate will ultimately integrate into Syria's central administration remains unresolved and has been postponed to later negotiations. A sale planned weeks in advance. None of this unfolded suddenly. It was the result of an operation planned months ahead. According to a Reuters investigation published on 22nd of January and confirmed by multiple diplomatic sources, the rapid handover of SDF-controlled territory was shaped through high-level talks held earlier this month in Damascus, Paris, and Iraq. On 17th of January, the United States informed Kurdish leaders that its strategic priorities now lay with Ahmed al-Shara, not with the SDF. The Syrian army moved quickly. It pushed beyond agreed ceasefire lines and rapidly retook Arab-majority provinces. Despite the truce, it surrounded the last Kurdish towns in the northeast. Turkey supplied Damascus with weapons and ammunition, and armored vehicles were deployed to the area. When Washington threatened new sanctions, al-Shara temporarily stepped back, granting the SDF additional time. Shortly after, Mubarak publicly declared that the SDF's role as the main ground force against ISIS was over. With that statement, the Kurds lost their most powerful bargaining chip. The US pulled back, and the ISIS flag returned. The partnership between the United States and the SDF began during the 2014-2015 siege of Kobani. For nearly a decade, it formed the backbone of the fight against ISIS. Today, according to SDF figures, around 9,000 ISIS fighters remain in custody in northeastern Syria. Another 24,000 people, mostly women and children, are held in camps, particularly Al-Hol. The United States does not trust Damascus to manage this responsibility. That is why ISIS detainees are now being transferred to Iraq. Recent events explain Washington's concern. Over the past days, Syrian forces released 3 videos that triggered international outrage. The first, filmed in Raqqa, showed a fallen female YPG fighter. Her braided hair had been cut off and displayed on camera. In Kurdish culture, a woman's braid symbolizes honor, identity, and resistance. Kurdish women responded by posting images of their own braided hair across social media. A second video emerged from Shaddadi, showing Syrian forces vandalizing the graves of Arab SDF fighters who had died fighting ISIS. The most alarming image came once again from Raqqa, a man waving the ISIS flag. The footage was recorded in Kerama on 18th of January, after the SDF withdrew and local Arab tribes assumed control. The worst may still be ahead for the Kurds. Turkey considers the SDF the Syrian branch of the PKK and officially classifies it as a terrorist organization. Washington has long described its cooperation with the SDF as tactical and temporary. Now that this partnership is effectively ending, Kurdish communities feel abandoned. Ankara insists that the SDF must be dissolved in the same manner as the PKK. According to recent reporting by the Wall Street Journal, the Trump administration is once again debating a full withdrawal of US forces from Syria, an idea Trump pursued during his first term before CENTCOM blocked it. In return, Washington expects Ankara to permanently curb Iran's influence inside Syria. Whether the personal relationship between President Erdogan and Donald Trump will evolve into a durable political axis remains uncertain. What is clear is this: Ankara has made no secret of its satisfaction at seeing the Kurds pushed out of northern Syria. Yet, if Damascus fully consolidates power, it may eventually demand the withdrawal of Turkish forces as well. The secret bargain: finding a home for Hamas. Since Hamas's attacks on 7th of October 2023, the Middle East has been reshaped according to the strategic priorities of the US-Israel alliance. The next target is Iran, and developments in Syria are directly linked to that confrontation. This week, 2 seemingly unrelated events unfolded simultaneously. Israel imposed an entry ban on President Erdogan's son, Bilal Erdogan, citing his pro-Palestinian statements. In practice, the move was symbolic and carried little real consequence. At the same time, in Davos, a US-led plan was finalized. Under this plan, Hamas's leadership agreed to disarm and leave Gaza. Turkey is among the countries being considered as a possible destination for senior Hamas figures. While Ankara and Tel Aviv appeared publicly locked in a diplomatic dispute over a symbolic travel ban, behind closed doors, they were negotiating the future relocation of Hamas's leadership. The system has collapsed, and the West finally admits it. Let me be direct. We are not living through a transition. We are living through a rupture. These are not my words. Canada's Prime Minister said this in a historic speech in Davos. He acknowledged,
We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim.
That system has now collapsed. Global leaders are trying to mask years of failure with fear, warning of a migrant threat or of China's unstoppable rise. The speech received a standing ovation. Such a moment, such open honesty, is extraordinarily rare in international politics. I never expected it from a Western leader, certainly not from Canada. It is the first defining moment of 2026. The collapse of the international order did not begin with chaos. It began with truth. I am Tarık Toros. You've been watching What's Happening in Turkey. See you next week.